All right, hello and welcome to pmblounge.com. Today we are going over the tools and techniques, the tools required for the collect requirements process. And we have already gone over the collect requirements process, which again is one of the processes of the scope management knowledge area. The link to all the videos that we have done on scope management knowledge area will be available. The entire playlist will be available in the description below, so you can go over, check that out, and learn about scope management knowledge area. So one of the processes, of course, collect requirements that we have covered earlier in details. I'll quickly go over that first, just to kind of revise so that all of us are on the same page before we talk about the tools and techniques of the collect requirements process. So we are actually looking into just three of the tools. As you can see, interviews, focus groups, and facilitated workshops. There are obviously other tools as well available for the collect requirements process, which we will go over in the future videos. As always, I'd like to remind you that whenever we cover PMP related courseware, PMP related concepts, there is typically a detailed article which complements the video. The link to that article will also be available in the description. All right, let's get started with interviews, focus groups, facilitated workshops, the three tools that we are discussing today. But before that, let's talk about a bit about collect requirements. So, like I said, we have already discussed the collect requirements process. The link to the entire playlist is available in the description, but just to kind of give you a brief overview of collect requirements is all about determining, documenting, and managing stakeholders' requirements to meet the project objectives. As a project manager, you need to know what is the expectation from the project to be able to meet it. So as a project manager, your main aim, your main goal is to meet the requirements, right? The expectation that other several different stakeholders have from the project. The When I say the project, we mean the product or the service that the project is delivering, right? So all stakeholders will have certain expectations from the product of the project, and as a project manager, you need to know what those expectations are before you can even plan to be able to meet them, right? So that's about it. There are several tools you can use to collect requirements and know what these expectations are. Today, we are looking into three of them, which are interviews, focus groups, and facilitated workshops. So let's get started with the first one, which is interviews. So interviews, it's obvious, right? Like it sounds, right? It's interviews. You are basically doing a one-on-one interview with the stakeholder, right? And this is the best way to collect requirements and tap into the expectations from the product or service that the project is creating. So what you'll do basically is, as a project manager, you call upon different stakeholders. And obviously, you don't call upon every Tom, Dick, and Harry who is a stakeholder in the project, because there could be tons of stakeholders for every project, but you definitely call upon the most important stakeholders, right? Your project sponsor, your people from the engineering, people from the let's say from the sales side, people who are going to be the actual users or the consumers, right? You can kind of call folks from the product team. So you can call up these stakeholders. It's totally your choice. It's totally something that definitely needs to be planned, of course. And you can have interviews with them, right? You can have one-on-one interviews with them, and you can understand and document what their requirements are. Based on all these interviews, you'll definitely be able to put together the requirements document. And this is again just one of the tools of collecting requirements. This is not the end all, and this is not the only thing that you would do as a project manager to collect requirements. The second thing that we do is called focus groups. Let's look into that. So think of this as interviewing a group of people together, right? So we just interviewed one person. We interviewed one person at a time, right? You interviewed the sponsor first, then you interviewed, let's say, someone from the product team, then you interviewed someone from the sales team, you interviewed someone from the, let's say, the customer support team, right? To understand what the requirements are, what the expectations are from your next product or service that your project is going to offer, right? so that your project is going to deliver, right? So think of this focus groups, think of this as a group interview, right? So when you're having one-on-one interviews, right, you might notice that there are conflicting requirements. The sales team wants something while the customer support team might not want that very feature that the sales team is looking for. So these are conflicting requirements. So the best way to keep this, conflict of interest at bay is to have a group of stakeholders and work with them together, right, and come up with the requirements. So this, when you work with all of them together, this is known as focus group. Now, as a project manager, of course, you will be the one responsible for conducting these focus group meetings and making sure that team is in line with what the requirements of the project are, right? So that's about what focus groups stand for. That's what focus groups are for. So the last item that we discussed in this video is again another technique which is known as facilitated workshop. Now, what are facilitated workshops, right? So facilitated workshops, you can think of them as an expansion to focus groups itself, right? So focus groups, while you are interviewing a group of people together, facilitated workshop takes things at a larger scale, right? So you might not be the one who is going to conduct facilitated workshop because things tend to get pretty technical here, and as a project manager you're not really expected to understand all the technical details of the project, right? So you know the example of a facilitated workshop could be a JAD session, which is also known as joint application design. If you have ever done a software project, it is quite possible that you have heard about JAD sessions, which is, like I said, the joint application design. So someone from the technical side of things, maybe an architect, maybe a designer, typically is the moderator of the JAD session. And all the important stakeholders that you can think of, the SMEs, the engineering team, the designing team, right? Even folks from the testing team, the sponsor, your higher level engineers, right? The tier ones, right? They can be involved in the JAD session. So this is a facilitated workshop which is conducted by moderators who are again not really project managers, but who are from the technical side of things as well. This is a structured, I'd like to call this a structured focus group meeting where the team, all the stakeholders, including the technical folks, are available and they'll do a brainstorming session to understand, to finalize on the requirements. So this is not something which is a 1 hour or 2 hour session again, right? So one-on-one interviews could be something where you can think of having a one-on-one session for, let's say, half an hour with each stakeholder and coming up with the requirements. Again, the problem with that is there could be conflicting requirements. So you do a focus group, which is where you interview a group of people together to make sure that conflicting requirements are at bay. And let's say you do that for 3 hours in a day, right? And complete the focus group. When it comes to facilitated workshops, though, facilitated workshops tend to go for a couple of days or more, and these are full day events, mind you. So it's what it sounds like, right? It's a workshop. It's a 9 to 5 workshop where everyone is gathered either on call remotely or they are, at the same place having a war room scenario of sorts where they do not leave the meeting room. They are all, they are all into it. They're all sitting together for, let's say, 2 or 3 days at a stretch and complete the workshop, the facilitated workshop. Again, like I mentioned, one-on-one interviews could be someone, I mean, as a project manager, you could be someone responsible to conduct it and take care of it. When it comes to focus groups, as a project manager, you could be the one who's responsible to conduct it and make sure you're taking down the requirements. But when it comes to facilitated workshops, this is where a project manager might not necessarily be the one moderating the entire event and taking care of the entire event. In fact, someone from the technical side of things, right, from the technical team, might be responsible for handling the facilitated workshop, because it you have all the stakeholders in place. It is a great idea and a good chance to get into the technical details of the requirements, instead of superfluously covering all the requirements from a higher level and not going into the details, right? So that's how facilitated workshops work. That's that's pretty much it that we had in this video. We've covered three tools. We've covered interviews, focus groups, and facilitated workshops. Of course, there are many more tools to collect requirements, and we'll do that in future videos. So subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't done so already, so that you make sure you don't miss out on them. Subscribe to this YouTube channel, and check us out on our social media, facebook.com/pmplounge and twitter.com/pmplounge. And as always, do check out the website pmplounge.com, your number one free resource for PMP certification and project management industry information. Thank you.